take this off. Thank you. The Special Assistant to President, and I'm hopeful that in the next couple of minutes that is available to us, we're able to discuss on issues that border on the defense and security of our nation. No doubt, um, the issue of security is a journey, and of course, we have made strides along the path, along the road of that journey. And so this morning, to set the stage rolling, I thought I should also let you know what we're doing. The armed forces of Nigeria, of course, in a bid to de-escalate the issues of insecurity, we've placed some measures to restore normalcy in the country. And so the key military operations have been reinvigorated in the area of organization, manpower, and equipment holding capacity in order to tackle insecurity, crimes, and address acts of criminality across the country. The services and, of course, other security agencies are currently planning and operating jointly in various theaters to achieve the desired effects. There are, of course, coordinated actions amongst the services, which, of course, in the course of our interaction, will be letting you know the details of all that. Now, what I perhaps also may need to indicate is that as part of the measures we've undertaken, we saw from the Northeast a structuring, a reorganization of the theater of operation there, giving effect to what the operation is now called Operation Hardin Kai, which of course seeks to place greater synergy amongst the services of the armed forces, namely the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, in such a manner that the command and control lies with the theater commander, and of course supported with a deputy theater commander who is of the Air Force. And beyond that, by virtue of the sectorial, delineations of the areas of responsibility, each of the commanders have the initiative to ensure that actions that are undertaken within their areas give effect to the overall end state which the theater commander decides. And so I believe that many of you have followed up on some of the interactions that the Director of Defense Information has been given to the public with respect to the activities of not just the operations in the Northeast, but across the entire country. We have also seen, the reorganization of the operation in the Northwest, which is Operation Hadaren Daji, which centered around all the states and hotspots within the Northwest geopolitical zone. And that operation currently has made a lot of impact, and that's reason perhaps many of you have heard of the shutdown of telecommunications. The whole essence of that is to actually, give greater effect to the operational engagements of the troops that are there. Of course, in the South, where we have Operation Delta Safe, where we're looking at issues that have to do with, crude, anti-crude oil theft, as well as other militancy-related issues and criminalities. The operation also have been, reshaped in such a manner that it has had greater effect. And I believe for many of you who are keen observers as to the engagements of our troops in that area, you have seen that, of course, there are the issues of piracy and other acts of criminality have ebbed very significantly. But of course, we still have, a few cases of, crude oil theft, which we are working to ensure that we eradicate. And of course, in the Southeast, many of you, perhaps every one of us, we all know the issues of the IPOB, the proscribed IPOB and ESN activities, what they seek to do, separatist agitations in that respect, having to lead up with some form of violence to which the armed forces and other security agencies are also involved to ensuring that we bring to an end issues that have to do with violence in that general area. So we have scaled up, of course, our presence, and then also ensuring that those criminal elements amongst them are those that will target. So I believe that if you do have clarifications as we as we progress, we will share those thoughts. We have also had key leadership engagements with other stakeholders, because we believe that approaches to peace must be both from the kinetic point as well as the non-kinetic. And so to that extent, we recognize that as an internal security operations engagement, that we need to have key leaders engagement of critical stakeholders to be able to bring some form of awareness, as it were, and if you like, logic and sense, or sense of reasoning to those who will see to have one form of influence or the other within that region. We're not just zeroing in on the Southeast for key leaders engagement. It's across the country, and I believe that many of you who have also followed up some of the visits that I, along with my colleagues and talking about service chiefs, have had to undertake previously. Then, of course, the engagements of the Armed Forces of Nigeria under the auspices of the Multinational Joint Task Force, which I believe you know of, which is a platform that brings the militaries of the contiguous countries, that is the riparian states of the Lake Chad, for the effect to bring in some form of sanity to bear within the Lake Chad region itself, where we've had issues. Then, of course, the MC Eleron touched on the massive surrendering of the Boko Haram terrorists in the Northeast by virtue of the actions that we've undertaken, and we believe that that is an achievement. Of course, issues that more or less surround that the massive surrendering of those elements, what we're dealing with currently, namely having to see, issues that have to do with disarmament and rehabilitation, demobilization and rehabilitation in that regard. So to that extent, Operation Safe Corridor has been scaled up in so many respects. These and of course several other engagements that we are undertaking. But I also believe that I need to also let you know that issues of defense and security is not just military-centric affair. It has to involve all stakeholders, all the citizens, and to that extent, we have also engaged with a good number of, government establishments as well as other non-governmental, establishments, all in the hope, to share thoughts and ideas to the end that we'll have a better, and a saner, or if you like, a more secured environment. So this we have also done with both, many state governors. We have also dealt with a good number of individuals in this regard, and I believe that our engagement in terms of civil-military cooperation, civic activities, has been largely intended to ensure that we bring understanding to bear with all the actions that we're undertaking and where it fits into the overall picture as directed by Mr. President. And of course, we have had, some form of security stakeholders fact-finding and reconciliation committee programs across the country, and that, I believe that we will also, if you want more details, that I will share with you in due course. Now, again, the MC touched on the massive support from the federal government regarding our re-equipping program, the re-equipping of the armed forces and, of course, other security agencies. And you know that the issue of the Super Tucano has been largely touched on. I believe that there's nobody in this room that, in my view, who may not be in picture as to the realities. Currently, we have the 12 of them on ground, and we've taken delivery, and we've also deployed them in that sense. Then, of course, a good number of different classes of boats and ships that we've received for the maritime domain. And of course, for the land forces, we've received a good number of equipment, both track and wheel equipment, to which our troops are currently using to be able to bring greater effect to our operational effectiveness across all theaters. And of course, there is continual procurement and of ammunition. You know that ammunition, even though They appear as capital projects, but they are more of recurrent in nature because the expenditure of ammunition is on a continuous basis. So for as long as you get engaged in operations, you have no reason but to keep expending ammunition. Again, to be able to give effect to our surveillance, capacity, the Falcon Eye, which is dedicated to the maritime environment, for us to see even right from Abuja here, we're able to know what happens within our waters. That equipment, of course, has been activated, has been launched, and this is serving its purpose. This, of course, goes to support the other federal government initiative through NIMASA, the Deep Blue project, which we have also deployed, that has made our engagements in the maritime domain to be to get to the effectiveness level that we observe currently. Now, I thought that this platform will afford me the opportunity to say that, of course, with all modesty, that for the Northeast we have had an improved security, no doubt, essentially, and that's the reason why over 13,000 of the Boko Haram terrorists, along with their families and associates, have surrendered to the troops. It's by virtue of the operational engagement that we've had that has led to all that. And of course, arrest of many pirates and then those that we've been able to pass to other agencies to be able to prosecute them, among several other initiatives, which has to do with destruction of illegal refineries, and other structures that have had to, impact negatively on our resources. I'm talking about oil and gas resources. So we've been able to frustrate, the activities of these vendors, and that, of course, has helped us to be able to stabilize the production. And are working in partnership with NNPC and other concerns within the oil and gas sector to be able to improve on the gains in that regard. And then, of course, we also have rescued a good number of those who have been rescued in partnership with other security agencies. And I believe that even though, of course, there are more that to be done, I believe that it's a journey. Like I said, security is a journey. So peace is only an outcome of that journey. So the state of peace, as you move along the road to the road of security, then, of course, the state of peace is reflective of what that journey is. And then I'm sure many of you have also gotten to understand our presence within the North Central geopolitical zone and the activities we're undertaking using the instrumentality of Operation Wise Stroke, and then, of course, other internal security engagement that we've had. The notorious Zone 2, was arrested. I'm sure it's already in the public domain, but I thought I use this opportunity to re-emphasize that. And of course, by virtue of that arrest, as so much spin-offs in terms of gains, intelligence-wise, have come, and targeted operations have been conducted to give effect to improve security in the North Central geopolitical zone. Perhaps you may also know that a few places in Niger State that have had some roads that were closed by virtue of criminal activities have now been opened, due to, of course, our operational activities with increased presence, among several other initiatives that we've taken. So perhaps I will stop there and then give room for you to ask your questions, and I'll be ready to take them as they come. Once again, I'd like to appreciate every one of you for this great opportunity to talk with you, and we'll also appreciate Femi for this great initiative. Thank you so very much. Go to bandits. I thought perhaps you would say Shegumi. I mean, good. Hit it. So you're reporters, Perceptions, as it is, are perception. I mentioned in my presentation that the issue of defense and security is not only within the purview of the military. It's actually a citizen-centric domain, implying that everyone, including you, members of the 40 states of the realm, are also part of it. We do not believe that anyone who should or who intends to play a part should be inhibited from playing the role he wants to play. But what is of interest is that for us is that whatever you do must not be at cross purposes with the objectives of the operation itself. Now, when you say that, or when it is perceived, or when you observe that it is perceived that engagement in the north is different from the engagement in the south, and very particularly in the southeast, I say no, that's not true. Why? Because the insecurity that we have in various parts of the country, they are not the same. There are manifestations that may appear similar, but they are distinct. The distinct characteristics of these insecurity issues, they are there. So what you find in the southeast is not the same thing as what you find in the northwest, or even the northeast, or even the north central. And you know that I have been a part of those who have been engaging with key leaders in the southeast who have had those engagements. So if you now say that in the southeast such thing, that cannot be correct. What you find with Sheikh Gumi is not working for government. Sheikh Gumi is you know him, is for me as an individual, I may not speak to whether I share the same views with him. That's not the issue. The point is that he is an individual, he is a person, and he represents a group of people that he thinks that he should use that approach to go to meet with the bandits. For me, my role as a soldier is to address all issues of insecurity. And if anyone thinks that he can try the shape and form of the armed forces, then of course let him engage in any form of criminality. But we believe that we still want to appeal to the senses of the generality of citizens, for them to understand that crime does not pay, violence does not pay, and so we have greater gains to make using other means to bring your views to government, but not through violence, because violence does not do anyone any good at all. Malami, if talking about numbers, the numbers keep changing in terms of the numbers we've neutralized and the numbers we've arrested since the shutdown. But one correction I would like to make is this. The shutdown is only in support of military engagements. But it's not that it's the military that determine that the shutdown should be made. Of course, it's in consultation with the military, because it is not our responsibility to shut down these telecommunication services. But you must also understand that government is a whole. So we were only a part of, and of course not just a part, but an instrument of governance. So the military is only an instrument of governance to bring security to bear, which forms as part of the effort of government, being that the primary responsibility of government is to ensure the peace and well-being of every citizen. So we, under that, undertake our operations, activities to be able to shore up the other components, government components that also undertaking development, as well as provisioning of other amenities that aggregates to what you term as governance. So we are responsible for the security content in that regard. So to that extent, looking at the numbers, of course, I did not envisage that you asked me for specific numbers. But let me say that within the period from the last report that I got on Monday, we have neutralized over 450 of the bandits. We've equally arrested well over 600 from our records. And of course, because it's a continuous thing, perhaps when I get back to the office, I believe that those figures would have also changed. And now, perhaps whilst answering that, I'd like to also indicate that the rescue operations that we've conducted that has led to the rescue of many of those who were abducted is also part and parcel of that action. And it's not just limited to Zamfara State. You also know that Operation Harindaji have oversight of Sokoto, Katsina. So the shutdown is only in Katsina, around in Zamfara. But of course, there are overflow that you find in Niger State, as well as even Kaduna, that you also find. Okay. Now, Felix, you're asking how long the blackout, in terms of communication, how long will it last? It's not for me to tell you how long it will last, but for as long as it's necessary, we appreciate that it will. But we also appreciate the fact that it has implications for the economy of the region. So that also is kept in context. But what you must understand is that to every policy, to every approach, there are pros and cons. There are benefits, and of course there are also losses that you encounter. It is by having to weigh the losses and then the gains that you'll be able to take a decision. We believe under the current setting, the shutdown has been more of a blessing of some sort. Well, of course, we would have loved that we never had such a situation in the first place. And that's the reason why, each time there are occurrences, there's a feedback mechanism that we inject into our analysis. So the analysis helps us to be able to come up with what next line of action, taking into consideration the lessons learned from such experiences. Now, whether the equipment is enough, resources certainly can never be enough. If they were, then of course we wouldn't have gone into the problem that we have in the first place. I am only indicating that there have been a massive injection of operational tools into the armed forces by virtue of the resolve of Mr. President. But then I also know from knowledge of higher defense studies that defense management, the economics of it, must be factored, which is that the government, you must not be oblivious of the resource available to government at any time T. And so when you look at the entire spectrum of government requirements and resources available, then of course it stands to reason that under this current setting that we are quite satisfied with what inputs are coming into the armed forces. So that does not imply that it's sufficient. That does not also imply that it's a once-off thing. No, it's a continuous process. And that's why, to many of you, you would have also observed that the budget that is under consideration currently at the National Assembly has a very sizable portion of it dedicated to the armed forces, issues of security, defense and security. It's by virtue of the fact that there's a need to upscale our equipment disposition as well as training that has led government to take that decision in that regard. So yes, we're happy with what we've gotten so far, but of course we believe that we'll keep scaling it up as resources become available. Security in the Northeast. Yes, of course. That again, the fact that currently we've not folded up the operation means that all is not well yet. what is what is essential is to know, what has been and what it is now, and where do we hope to be. So where we hope to be, we are not there yet. But where we are coming from, of course, where we are currently is a huge, and of course tons and tons of action that 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 more or less beneficial from where we are coming from. This is in that context I see it. Of course, there are many people who are still being dealt with in terms of, and unfortunately, and I feel so sad about it. Some places in the northeast that are still individuals and even towns and villages that are still experiencing one form of hardship or the other. But that's the way it is. We will. That's the reason why we're still there, and we'll continue to do what we're meant to do. So that they do not share, that some may not share it. Of course, I agree with you. They will not share it. But the greater part of them who understand the issues, of course, they applaud the actions we've taken, and you've had very many commentaries in that regard. So for me, we will not be distracted. We will remain resolute and undaunted in engaging to see that we scale up the operational engagements in that regard. The Chief of Defense Training Operations, whose responsibilities, who has oversight for those operations, not just in the North, but across the countries, right? That's the reason why I brought him here. It's not to speak with you, just to, for him to know and to corroborate what I've just told you. Now, the operations of the bandits, what the military high command, they feel about abductions and all that. Again, what maybe I should pose this back to you as a question. What really is the role of the military in any sovereign state? By virtue of our constitution, 1999 Constitution as amended, the military is primarily responsible for the defense of the territorial integrity of our country. Now, of course, Section 217, Subsection D, also recognizes the place for us to support the civil authority when it comes to internal security matters. So it is in that vein that we are engaged in all the operational theaters across the country. And so when the subset of the threat, which in this case is abduction, to which you believe that has now become the responsibility of the military high command, I think that is more or less a misrepresentation of the issues. We, of course, part and parcel of the entire security network that is undertaking measures to offset, the occurrences of abduction and other security threats. But it's not for you to perhaps impute on only the military high command. But what I must also indicate here is that the other agencies, the DSS in particular, and of course the police, have been very forthcoming in redressing some of these imbalances. And that's the reason why I have, periodic meetings with the heads of all the security agencies in order to ensure that there is, synergy in action across the entire space. So I believe that you would have also observed that the improvements that have come is something that is heartwarming. But because it's not at 0 point yet, then of course we cannot rest on our oars. So please do understand, as you relate to the rest of the society, that when you are making your analysis, it must be balanced. There has to be some form of equalization of what the responsibilities are. Not because we're looking for who to blame, but we're looking for a solution, how best, with the best approach to be able to get our nation back on course in terms of peace and security. So I just thought I should put that in context. Thank you. Well, Yusuf, your question is quite interesting. Please forgive me. I like to learn. I learn every day. why is the number of my soldiers killed of interest to you? Just want to. Now, first and foremost, okay, good. Thank you. The reason why I ask you is that we have a responsibility, being the nation's army, being that we're also populated by citizens of our country, coming from all the states of the country, and families that are Nigerians. We owe Nigerians the responsibility to be accountable to them. And so when we have operational engagements, we have forum, or there are fora meant for giving out of information, even though this is one, and I'm going to come to that. I'm only just giving you, just trying to help you to understand me and to understand the armed forces, and then also by extension your colleagues to be able to know where you need to pivot your search for data and information, and to also understand that there are implications, so to speak. As I speak to you here, the regular forum for dissemination of sensitive information of that nature is ongoing currently in my headquarters by the Director of Defense Media Operations. And so if only, I'm not in any way accusing you, no, not at all. I'm only this, because I like to learn, I equally use every opportunity to bring greater awareness to bear to those who perhaps may want to understand the nuances of our operational engagements. So the ambush you're talking about in specific terms, there are only 2 soldiers. I'm sorry, I withdraw only. There are 2 soldiers because I do not want even a soldier to be lost to any engagement. It's quite unfortunate, and this is precisely what it is. Okay. Now, Gloria, what level of arms proliferation? Of course, arms proliferation, in fact, proliferation of small arms and light weapons, which has become not just a global issue, but more importantly for us as a country, is something that's of interest to us. And so when you hear certain reports of we having to engage with our neighbors, we having to engage with other agencies that are responsible for border protection, it's from that context. Because the more we're able to limit the inflow of small arms and light weapons into our country, then of course we will not be seeing the end of any form of insecurity in our country. And so beyond our shores, we are interacting with a good number of countries as well as other bodies and global bodies to ensure that the menace of proliferation of arms and light weapons, is taken seriously. And I'm glad that back home here, of course, Mr. President has approved the establishment of the office for issues that have to deal with that. I'm sure you know that right in the Office of the National Security Advisor, there's an officer currently, of course, a retired colleague who is there along with his team addressing issues of proliferation of small arms and light weapons. And by virtue of the work they are doing in due course, that is going to be scaled up into a commission. And I believe that the centrality of issues of small arms and light weapons have led to that kind of setting. So it's a challenge to us, and we're working to ensuring that whatever action needs to be taken, that is done. Now, the Super Tucano, when did the 6 arrive? Of course, we expected them to arrive on the 23rd and 24th of September, but of course, in the course of the conveyance of those items, there were issues in terms of weather, and so there was a little delay. So on the 28th of September, we had them all in, the Super Tucanos, so we now have 2 of them. Now, aid agencies have noticed the impact. Of course, I believe that as a journalist, you know better than I do when you're looking at the role of aid agencies in conflict situations. Sometimes, of course, and I want to you know, applaud the actions of various aid agencies, but of course there are a few of them that you have some bad elements that have been working at cross purposes with the intents and purposes of the aid agencies. That is the reason why we equally deploy some form of intelligence oversight on the aid agencies that work within the theaters of interest to us. We believe that this also should attract your attention so that you help us to police the police, as it were. If you do so, then of course you will be contributing to the overall peace and security of our country. And so help us to also be our eyes on them if there are malfeasance that go on within their ranks. I will rely on you to please expose them. So if also in future you hear that we've taken some actions that appear to be a little bit harsh, please note that it's from this context. When do we expect an end to the Northeast operation? Then for the state of peace, for as long as we monitor the state of peace, of course there are benchmarks, and it's not for me, this forum to give you, a terminal date, but you do also know that as we move on the upward trajectory in terms of the state of peace, then of course that should give you an indication that at some point we're going to have a review of the setting and whether there's going to be a scaling down of military activities. But under the current setting, we have not made such a plan, and we have not assessed that time has come for us to undertake that kind of assessment. Emmanuel, of course, I can authoritatively confirm to you that Al-Barnawi is dead. As simple as that. He's dead and remains dead. Which part of the country are the bandits concentrating? What's can I also because I like being a student in the most of the time. Can you let me into your thoughts as to why that is necessary? They are essentially where they are, and that's the reason why we're engaged pursuing them. But more seriously, a larger percentage of the bandits remains in the Northwest. Of course, there are a few who are having inroads into the North Central. We are taking actions to ensure that they do not spread beyond the known locations. But may I tell you also that insecurity or threat, as it were, either terrorism, banditry, or any form of criminality, they are not confined to boundaries. And this is the reason why when we speak to issues that have to do with our national security, it's placed in context with our neighbors. Because if all is well at home and all is not well with our neighbors, then of course we can't have peace. So this is the reason why collectivism has become an approach in this regard. And for many of you who may have been very close observers, you will have gotten to know that there are greater interactions that we have with our neighbors, and we do not also want to offset the good neighborly relations that we have. All is because it is from the enlightened self-interest perspective that will do that, because it's more for our good to have such an engagement because of internal security issues than for us not to do that. So bandits locations, they remain largely in the northwest, and we are scaling up our operations to ensure that they are essentially addressed. Thank you.
Can we take two more questions? I think I respond to this.
No problem. No problem. Okay. All right. Bolaji, I'm not aware of the socio-cultural group that raised the alarm. Okay, Afenifere in the southwest raised alarm that there's terrorist build-up in Abuja and the FCT. Well, that's interesting. But can I please confirm to you that what we saw was a social media report raising some form of apprehension as to the presence of some, individuals or criminal elements within the presence of the FCT, to which we have taken measures to confirm and or not. And then in our effort, we have seen that their report is not true. And besides, we have equally taken measures to ensure that should anyone be desiring or having an idea to do that, then that does not happen. One thing you must understand is that by virtue of the current, environment, current climate, okay, technology climate, as it were, force around fear is being perpetrated by various means. And so some individuals that have ideas, the only way they can sell the idea is by pushing it to the public, hoping that there will be an acceptance of that idea. And so if the security agencies are oblivious of that setting, of course they get hoodwinked and then of course lose focus. So for you as members of the press, you must also come to terms with that reality, that sometimes you find that many of these reports, they have an intended aim, an intended purpose, and so the narrative has to be created to be able to fit into that purpose. And so this is why sometimes some people have to have a rebuttal, some have to say, look, actually this news is fake, and so on and so forth. But on this matter, it is not true, it's not a true report. Timothy, yes, no doubt about it, that so much money has been spent, or is being spent, and will continue to be spent on military hardware. Look, if you must know, defense and security is expensive and damn very expensive. But you see, there are also things that are much more costlier, indeed, and even at greater levels, all right, and multiples, and that is insecurity. So the equipment that is being procured by the federal government, to which every taxpayer has an input, is very essential, and it must be sustained if we must have peace. And that's the reason why the measures we undertake to ensure that these equipment are not misused, that is through upskilling of our training, capacity building for all of us that are using this equipment so that you don't have them damaged, and then also ensuring that you work with information that is cocksure, that is engaging with different agencies to ensure that the operations that we undertake are targeted, are operations that are pinpoint, that will enable us to reduce the losses. That's all part of the effort that we do to ensure that these equipment are not wasted, given the fact that they are quite expensive. The aircraft, for example, and some other things. And besides, when you're even talking about issues of, accountability, there is a Public Procurement Act that will live by the details of that provision. So we do not engage into procurement without respecting, the legal provisions as enunciated in the Public Procurement Act. So that also helps us to be able to ensure that there is value for money, value for the expenditures that government is making on our equipment. Then, of course, the re-engagement of service personnel, and that I don't know where you see there are so many things that many of us misinterpret. Some form a position of ignorance. I'm not saying that you are. No, that's not what I'm saying. Others from a position of half information or misinformation. Some others are actually, mischief makers, and some, of course, also they are genuine, seekers of truth. Now, on this issue of re-engagement, someone who has served 35 years, all right, no doubt there are experiences that he has, okay, which are useful for containment of the kind of problem that we have. But there are things that he cannot also do. The energy of a 25, 30, 40-year-old is not the same for the energy of a 60, 65-year-old. But the wisdom, experience, of course, of the 60, 65-year-old is something to factor. Now, for you, I'm not going to tell you where we are. And of course, we are working with a good number of those of our colleagues, our forebears who have been engaged in various capacities, and they are doing incredibly well. But when you're talking about mass, certainly not the kind of your expectation in terms of mass, no. Rather, we will look for mass, we need, the younger generation. Of course, you also know that those of us serving and senior now, there's a growth process, all right? And so we will also at some point fizzle out, and others will replace us. So life is a continuum, as it were. Okay, so let us, for you who are members of the fourth estate of the realm, who help to bring greater understanding to bear on these matters, please understand the context, so that you don't join those who help to misinform. Please do not engage in such. Now, in specific terms on the security debarment allowance, when there is a policy of government, again, there are those who will gain, and if truly is a gain, and those who will perceive it as a loss. Now, my predecessors, undertake around, they engage in analysis, of the current setting and what is perceived for the future, based on reports of committees that were set in this regard. And eventually recommendations were made, to which the MAFAs would now have it, which of course has the content of the development allowance, was promulgated, and Mr. President was gracious enough to have it. Yes, of course, there are those who, of course, left service before then. That is life itself. Sometimes when you have, of course, let me, bring some form of clarification to bear. The matter is even now being, addressed. The Minister of Defense, set up a committee to review, and then, of course, they made certain observations. Those observations have been, have been compiled, and then action has been taken. Until that is out, I need you to please understand that it is not because there's security department allowance not being paid, and that's why our colleagues are not contributing. No, that's not true. That's not correct. Because many of those who have engaged are even those who have not benefited from that provision. So please, let's get it let not individuals who have other motives whisper certain things to you, and then you cling, they cling on it, and then that does not represent the majority of our colleagues who have, retired, and they are doing well, and they mean well for us. We have had a lot of engagement with them, and they call and to speak to the level of support that they have for us and encouragement to which has motivated a good number of us. So let not a few, individuals who, in my view, may be, disgruntled, who perhaps do not serve the purpose, the interest of those of our colleagues who retired, whispering certain things to you, and then it's now left for you to escalate. Please, let's not engage in that. And I'd like to use the opportunity to thank our colleagues who have retired, who are giving their support in various dimensions to the current engagements. And each time we engage with them, each time they speak to us, what we hear from them is so encouraging. And I think I use this time to salute their courage and to salute them for the service to our great nation which they have. And perhaps, if you also permit me, to use medium to appreciate Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief, for the very focused direction and leadership he has given to us in the armed forces that has enabled us to do what you're doing currently to improve on the lot of defense and security in our country. And to you, members of the press, you've equally done pretty well, and I think I will ask you to please clap for yourself. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.